You ready to do this, Thomas?
I'm ready to do this, Spencer. Punch it, Chewy.
Welcome, super friends, to the Fortress of Nerditude podcast, a safe place to talk about all things in nerd and pop culture. I'm Spencer Stapleton, and my co-pilot tonight is Thomas King.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
We're two nerds that just refuse to grow up. Thank you for joining us. This is episode number 73.
Ooh.
We release every Thursday morning on iTunes, Google Music, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, and anywhere else podcasts are available. If you like what you're hearing, hit that subscribe button and get us automatically each and every week in your ear holes. Thomas, how are you? I'm
doing very well, Spencer. How you doing?
You know, it's been a rough day. It's been kind of a rough week, to tell you the truth.
Has it?
But I'm happy to be back in the Fortress of Nerditude. I'm happy to be back podcasting. And I'm happy to be here with you tonight because I think it's going to be a fun night tonight.
I think so, too. I'm so happy and I'm psyched to do this right now.
Nice. So, Thomas, why don't you tell the super friends kind of where you're at and like what you're doing, what's going on in your life. Just tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I've been doing video game journalism for a few years now. Worked for a few websites, did something on my own, and now I'm trying to kind of get back to that, like the homegrown stuff. So right now, all my energy is going towards setting up my website, YouTube channel, Twitch, and Mixer.
Nice.
Yeah, so we just sunk in about, like 7,000 into the studio.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's been my wallet's been crying for a little while, but it's worth it so far. It's very, very worth it.
You know, it's one of those things though, like if you love it and it's a passion, like that kind of commitment doesn't seem like much of a sacrifice, right?
Right, exactly. Like it leaves my wallet, but at the same time, it's like once I start, you just get that, like, I don't know, that feeling in the back of your head, and it's like, yes, let's do it.
Right.
Yes.
So are you currently working a day job then while you're trying to fund the site and all the equipment that you're getting set up?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's probably smart, right? That would be a good idea.
Right.
Yeah, I'm doing I work at this little restaurant down by me. I would do service, and I'm also a pizza guy.
Nice. Now, when you say pizza guy, like, are we talking delivery or are we talking like you make the pies?
Oh, I make the pizza, man.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so now I know you're in Queens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So tell me, Chicago deep dish pizza or New York thin crust? Where are you at?
Oh, God, are you kidding me? First off, not even just New York thin crust, Brooklyn thin crust. That's where it's at.
Oh, yeah. Get some Grimaldi's in you? Is that what you're talking about?
I do like Grimaldi's, but there's a couple that I guess people don't know as much that I enjoy way better than Grimaldi's.
Okay, so hit me up and tell me what this is right now, because the next time I get to New York, I've got a list and I've got to go check them out.
There's one that I've had since I was a child, which is Corner Pizza with a K, and that's on East 3rd, and it's a couple blocks away from Church Ave in Brooklyn. That's my favorite spot to go to, because that's like the classic, like they even have the orange benches and the tables with all the tiles all over the place. It's like real classic Brooklyn pizza.
Does it feel like it's like right out of the 1970s?
Like maybe even the 60s, yeah.
I love that. So I grew up in Chicago, just right outside the city. I'm a sucker for deep dish stuffed pizza, man. If it's 2 inches thick, you have to use a fork.
Oh my God.
That is pizza to me. I love it.
Yikes. That's a pie, my friend. That's like a dessert pie.
I'm telling you, sometime we'll have to get together and I'll make a pizza for you. You make a pizza for me, and we'll just go hog wild because
deal.
I love pizza, man.
Yeah. I think pizza's like the lifeblood of North America. So
if it's cold, if it's hot, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah.
I'll take it anyway. So you're working living in Queens. You got pizza going on. You got this studio that you're pulling together. where do you see yourself in 5 years, man? I don't know why all of a sudden this is a business interview. What's your ambition?
Well, sir, my ambition is to create. No, I'm just kidding. I just really want to get to a point where I'm working the site full time. I'm able to do game reviews and podcasts and play D&D full time, and I think I set up the right team to be able to do that. Like, everybody's really passionate. So in 5 years, I think we'll have a fully functioning website that really, funds itself.
Do you have a competitor in mind? Someone like you look at and you say, I want to be able to one day take them down, or like I want to be as good as them, or have as many listeners or page clicks, or that kind of stuff. Like, do you have an Everest that you're looking to climb, like something you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, I think actually my goal is a little bit bigger than that, which I should maybe scale back at some point. But my overall goal is to take like traditional games media, because it's become very stagnant, especially as of late, and it seems that like the Kotakus and the Polygons of the world are interested more in like the reality journalism side of it. They're going around and doing all this research for basically nothing about articles that people don't care about. So I'm trying to make traditional games media a little more modern and kind of combine the biggest nerd cultures together that everybody really loves. So it's kind of a one-stop shop of something very different.
See, I like that, because that's kind of what I've always wanted the Fortress of Nerditude to be. Like, you know how it is when you start a podcast, when you start something, everyone says you have to be specific, you have to have a niche, you got to do this one thing, right? So you can find your core group, your listeners, your viewers, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And I instinctually said I don't want that. Because if I don't have a massive following, I'm okay, but I want to be able to like reach across and say, I want to talk comic books, so I can bring in comic book people. I want to talk video games. I want to talk movies. Like I want to be able to bring people in from different aspects of nerddom, different aspects of pop culture.
Yep.
Because inevitably there's so much crossover. I love Doctor Who. I also love Firefly. I also love Star Trek and Star Wars and video games. I just all over the map, right? I love books. I love Tolkien. I love, Sanderson. I love Patrick Rothfuss. Like all these different things. I'm not confined. I'm not a one person entity. So why does my podcast have to be that way? Why do we have to like narrow ourselves and put us in boxes, right?
Exactly. Yeah, because being a nerd, like it stretches far and wide. It's not just such a narrow view. We do so many things. Like I come across video gamers that play D&D. I come across D&D guys that love Star Wars. I come across Star Wars nerds that love Tolkien. Like it goes everywhere.
Yeah, so I love that. I love that that's your goal, is to find a way to break down some of these traditional barriers and make it a all-inclusive type of thing. I love that.
Oh yeah, maybe break the mold.
Yeah, I love that. So this is weird, because like for me, this week's been rough, because it's the last week before I go on vacation, and two of my clients. So I'm an IT system administrator. Two of my clients just were bought out by a much larger company, and so like we're now starting to get into the transition of what is it going to take to conform to this larger company's expectations and their specifications, and so we're trying to figure all that out, and so it's been a stressful while. So it also is compounded by the fact that I am so done with work. I want this vacation, and tomorrow's the last day. And like today, I just couldn't get through it. And I'm also trying to get stuff together for my motorcycle club. We have a big charity ride coming up Memorial Day weekend, and I'm heavily involved in the advertising and putting stuff together and trying to get sponsors. And so I was trying to do a lot of that on my lunch break today, and it's just stressful. There's a lot to do, and we're getting down to crunch time. And so I'm really looking forward to being done. But the nice thing is that I'm recording the podcast early right now. So usually I record on Monday nights and we release on Thursdays. But tonight's actually Thursday night, the night we released episode number 72, and now I'm recording 73. Because next week, I'm in Disneyland with my wife and my two kids, and my mother and her husband, and I am just planning on not taking anything with me. I'm going to have my phone, but no laptop, no tablet. I'm not going to be in communication. I'm just going to enjoy a week off and kind of have a quiet week.
That's smart. Let the brain relax.
Yeah, I mean, at least as quiet as you can get in Disneyland with, kids screaming about dropping a churro on the ground and Peter Pan ride not working, whatever it may be.
Oh my God, it's Mickey Mouse.
Right, exactly. We got to go see him. Yay! So.
Oh, filling out that autograph book. Oh man.
Oh, dude. See, I don't do the autograph books with my kids. Like, no? I know it's a thing. I'm more of a, hey, go get a picture, give Mickey a hug, give Goofy a hug, whatever. Because, like, let's be honest. That is someone in a costume and a signature from a person in a costume impersonating a character to me seems like just a waste, but yet a picture to the kid, they're going to look at that and say, that was Goofy. They're going to have that memory and they're going to say, yes, that was when I met Mickey. That was when I met Donald. Mm-hmm. That's when I met Spider-Man, whatever it may be. But like a signature, it's like that book's going to get lost or it's going to get thrown away.
Oh, no way, man. I still have mine.
Really?
From when I was 6 years old. I still have mine.
That's crazy.
The only one I didn't get was Cinderella because we were supposed to have breakfast at the castle. And, And this was like my parents brought me for my birthday, on my 6th birthday. And like literally the day of my birthday, they're like, I'm sorry, we have no more room. I was like, what? Like, I wanted to go to the castle so bad.
Yeah.
And that's the only one I didn't get, but I got everybody else. I think I got Pluto like 3 times just because. Why not?
Because he's all over the place.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah, I always see Pluto all over the place. Donald Duck is kind of elusive. We've had a hard time tracking down Donald Duck.
I don't think they really like Donald Duck. That's why.
Yeah, maybe not. I mean, I love the guy. I mean, come on, he's in the Navy. He doesn't wear pants. He's kind of weird. He's got a lisp. He's kind of cool. Yeah. He's different. I like it. Well, good, man. Thomas, I'm glad you're here tonight. Let's get into some Rebel Intelligence, man. Let's get this party rolling.
Let's do it.
I always have to let you know, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Rest in peace, you Bothans.
All right, we're into Rebel Intelligence. Thomas, you are the guest co-host tonight, so you will get to lead us off. What do you have for us this week?
Oh, snap. All right. Well, apparently, somehow, from the grave, J.R.R. Tolkien is going to give us a new book set in Middle-earth this summer. Now,
listen, if Tupac can come back from the dead to give us an album, Professor Tolkien can do the same thing with a book, right?
I mean, I guess, but like Tupac would just be rapping with words, and you always hear stuff from the dead. But I don't know, is Tolkien able to write and then translate it to us? Because that's pretty cool.
It's probably going to happen. So what's this? So what's the deal? Like, is this a new book? Is this an old writing? What is this?
So it's called The Fall of Gondolin, and it's supposed to come out in August, apparently, which, wow, thanks for the warning, really. He actually wrote it, like, in 1916, but it wasn't, it never got released for some reason. So, I mean, I'm very curious to see what this is really about, and all the details we've gotten so far is that it has a Dark Lord, and we have a reluctant hero who turns into a genuine hero. So it seems kind of like very prototypical Lord of the Rings.
It sounds like if he wrote this in, you said 1916,
1916, right? Yeah.
Because if I recall, and I'm going to get crucified because I'm using my memory here and I'm not looking it up, like The Hobbit was written around like 1929, 1930.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
Tolkien didn't write The Fellowship of the Ring until like 54, maybe 55, somewhere around in there, I believe, because it was like a good stretch of time later, I believe,
right.
Before
that much. That much I know is like he wrote it and then it took a while.
Right. So my guess is if he wrote this in 1916, I wonder if this was like something he did and he kind of used as maybe like a benchmark for what he was gonna future write, with the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Well, that's what I'm very curious about, because it even clearly states like this is the first introduction with orcs, and it also has one of his biggest battle narratives. So I'm wondering if maybe he went like too epic and kind of reined it back with Hobbit a little bit. I feel like it may have been like way out there.
Well, I know he wrote The Hobbit for his children because he wanted to write a children's story, which I've been actually reading The Hobbit to my 5-year-old son and my almost 4-year-old son. And we have to do it like, I can get through maybe half a chapter every time we read, maybe a little less, because, you know, they're young and I have to recap what happened in the last chapter, then I have to read, then I have to recap what we just read because they miss a lot of it.
Oh, yeah.
But, The Hobbit, like, it's not for, like, young kids. Like, 8, 9, 10, sure.
Yeah, for sure.
5 and 4-year-olds, maybe not quite.
Most of it will go over their head or they'll be sleeping already.
Right. But here's what I figure. By recap the highlight, then eventually when I finish the book with them, which we're only up to the part where the Eagles have come and saved Gandalf and the dwarves from the wargs and the orcs right after they get out of the Misty Mountains.
Okay, yeah.
And so we're kind of up to that part yet, so we're getting the Orn section before too long, and then Mirkwood. But what I figure is when I'm finished with the book, then I pop in like the 1977 Rankin and Bass Hobbit cartoon, because then they can actually get a visual to a story they kind of already know. And I loved that cartoon as a kid, so I'm hoping to try to, imprint that on them.
I never actually saw that cartoon.
Really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Now,
I'm curious.
I love it, and I love the music in it, and some of the music in it actually is almost directly taken and put into the Lord of the Rings trilogy movies.
Okay, that's cool.
However, if you go watch it now, just know that 1977, and it was like good for 1977, but in 2018, yeah, nostalgia's helping me out there why I love it so much. I'm just going to be honest.
Of course.
So this is exciting. I love this world. I love Tolkien's writings. So something new. I mean, man, like I said, Tupac can do it. Tolkien can do it.
Tolkien can definitely do it.
Back,
Yeah,
bring
for
it
sure.
back. Okay, so I've got something for you. This was announced today. I have professed my love of the documentary King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters for a long, long time. I think that came out like 2007. So it's been like, what, 9 years now? No, 11 years?
Has it been that long?
I think, 2007. Wow. Yeah, so it's been like 11 years ago. Anyway, in the film, you see an up-and-comer, Steve Wiebe, and he's like this down on his luck, teacher in like the Redmond, Washington area, and he's just like, he doesn't get the breaks, and so he gets a Donkey Kong arcade that he puts out in his garage, and he just starts playing it, and like he tries to break the high score, and then of course he ends up going up against the current high score record holder, Billy Mitchell, who's really portrayed as the bad guy in this film, and I remember looking at the guy going, yeah, this guy's a real piece of work. And then he talks in the film and you kind of see what happens. And definitely the way he's portrayed in that film, he comes across as a real piece of work. He's that guy that you just love to hate, which is, great for the movie. It creates drama. But there's a moment where Steve Wiebe ends up passing like the 1 million point record holder, and he does it live. And then, like, through some, I don't know, like deceptive means maybe, Billy Mitchell submits a videotape showing that he actually beat the 1 million mark ahead of, and that he's just been holding this for a long time in order to, just kind of release it when he needed to, sort of thing, which is like so freaking arrogant.
Yeah, for real.
Like, it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so it's like this whole controversy, and like they make Steve Wiebe in this film, and in real life, because this really did happen, they made him like show up to events and prove his scores live and whatnot, and they questioned the veracity of his claims and whether he really did it. Here's the thing. And this is now where like I kind of like this, and I take some sick pleasure in this. Today, Twin Galaxies, which is kind of the video game high score, kind of authority. They help do this stuff for Guinness. They announced today, after reviewing Billy Mitchell's scores and reviewing the tapes and some of the evidence he presented for his scores, that they feel that he has, I don't want to say cheated, because cheated is not the right word, but he submitted scores for the competitive leaderboards in Donkey Kong using a MAME cabinet, not the actual arcade. And if you know what MAME is basically, it's emulation. And so he's basically using a board that's emulating the software for Donkey Kong, which can be manipulated. Yep. And so that's not legal for the records. And so basically what happened is they said, hey, the only one that really authenticated Billy Mitchell's scores was this guy named Todd Rogers. Todd Rogers' scores on all Twin Galaxies had been erased maybe like a month or two ago because they found out that his record in Atari's 2600 Dragster had been physically possible, and so he cheated, so they've wiped him off and said he can't compete, we won't recognize any of his scores, and he was one of the ones that authenticated Billy Mitchell. And so Billy Mitchell, as of today, has been banned from Twin Galaxies leaderboard. All of his scores have been wiped off. And according to Twin Galaxies, now Steve Wiebe holds the record as the official first million-point record holder in the game of Donkey Kong.
The hero wins.
The hero wins. It only took 11 years.
Yeah, seriously.
So I don't know, like this, I don't know about you, but like for me, this is like a part of like the video game industry that like doesn't maybe get talked about as much, right? Because there's all the mainstream stuff. Like today, everyone's talking about the review of God of War, right? Or they're talking about, hey, Destiny 2's releasing, some more content coming up in May, blah, blah, blah. Those are the big...
Oh, do people still listen to that? I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, some people do. I mean, I saw it. It was on Twitter. But you know what I'm saying? Like, they follow like the big titles, the big AAA stuff. And here's a section of video game culture where people are still actively playing old arcade games and trying to set high scores on things that were like incredibly, incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah, man.
And I love that. Like, I love that, like, the old stuff's not forgotten. It's still out there. People are still doing that.
Yeah, and it goes even above and beyond that for, like, just our video game history. Something has been corrected, clearly, and it stands as our history. Like, this was a big event back then. Like, this was huge. And that's, like, something like that kind of brought in like Crash TV and Housemarque, and it's influenced all. You can see the influence today still. Yeah,
I mean that's why we have things like worldwide leaderboards. Where I mean I know it's kind of silly, but if you play the latest Mario on the Switch, Super Mario Odyssey, they've got like this little balloon world thing, and you can hide a balloon and people got to find it and and like. That's a thing, and like there's scoreboards, and if you do like the little races against like the Koopa bros that say like you gotta race, all my other bros, like
those
like
are cool.
There's records for like this is the fastest person in the world to complete this, and like that kind of competitiveness wouldn't be around if it wasn't for things like Pac-Man and Galaga and Miss Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and like these games being competitive back still in the arcade scene way back when.
Oh yeah, man. And those things I do have to say, like the worldwide leaderboards are awesome, but you should see have you seen the insanity on like Mario Maker?
No, I haven't. Is it nuts?
Oh my God. Yeah, people just try to get it in the quickest time. So, and everybody's creating levels constantly, so it's never ending. It's just legitimately never ending, like old school Pac-Man or something.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder if they're going to bring Mario Maker to the Switch.
Oh, they have. It wouldn't make sense if they didn't.
Right?
Honestly.
I've been saying this for a long time, so a little off topic, but the NES Mini Classic and the SNES Mini Classic, right, that they just released? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got a SNES. I didn't get the NES. I just couldn't get my hands on it physically. But what I said is what they need to do if they're smart, because they don't really have a virtual console yet for old games, but what they should do is they should take those games that they put on those mini classic consoles and frickin' make a cart for the Switch that's got all those games, charge full price for it. People would still go out and buy it.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know why they don't do that. That's free money.
Nintendo probably will. I mean, they do everything in the book to make money. Like, we got an NES Mini, a SNES Mini. We got amiibos all over the damn place. Like,
right.
Yeah. So
I mean, they're using cardboard to sell.
Oh yeah, I almost forgot about
yeah.
that. Good lord.
The
What is it, the Labo.
Labo.
Right?
It's like they're selling cardboard, and it's gonna sell millions.
Absolutely.
It's ridiculous. Absolutely. I love it.
I actually saw it. I actually saw an article, and I forget where I saw it. I think it was on Twitter. It was like, is the Labo destined to fail immediately? And I was like, that's odd, because Nintendo's releasing this at a time where there's so much hype for Nintendo, and anybody pretty much, like my best friend, he's like, this looks really cool, and then he said, oh, and I'll also buy it for my daughter. And I was like, wow, okay, that's how you want to do it.
I've talked to a lot of people that are like parents, and all of them say, my kid wants this. And they see the interactive ability with their children. I look at it, me personally, I'm like, I could take it or leave it. I don't really need to get it. But if my boys see it and my boys want it, like, that would be the reason I would get it.
Exactly. Yep.
And so, I don't think it's destined to fail. I think it's going to make Nintendo money. And let's be honest, the games they're putting out with that thing probably aren't like super hard, because it's meant to interact with the little cardboard creation. And it's freaking cardboard. That's not expensive to produce. They're going to make tons of money.
And how much are they selling it for? It's a full release game at $60?
Well, it depends on the Labo you get, because some of the bigger ones I think are more expensive, like upwards of 80 or 90, and then a few of the smaller ones maybe as low as like 40. Last I checked, though.
That's still money. That's a lot of money for cardboard.
Listen, they're going to be laughing all the way to the bank, and you know what? Good for them. I mean,
honestly,
right? So anyway, what else you got for me, Thomas?
Oh man. Hold on to your hats, kids, because I know a lot of people are going to be sad.
Uh-oh.
Poor old Stan Lee is just getting thrown around like a rag doll towards the end of his life right now. And it's kind of upsetting. Even as a DC fan, this is kind of upsetting to me.
See, I'm a hardcore Marvel guy. I love DC too, don't get me wrong, but the man's 95 years old.
Yeah.
Like what's going on? Tell the Super Friends, what's happening right now.
Oh man. So apparently this person that was taking care of him, and apparently their attorney were handling would be the correct word, handling Stan Lee, and he had like a relationship with this 67-year-old, like the daughter of the attorney.
Uh-huh.
And she would have fits of rage and everything, spending all of his money, tens of thousands of dollars all the time. And this is part of like his financial problems as well, which he's been having for some reason as of late. But she went after Stan Lee. She choked him a couple times because she wanted a Jaguar. Which I mean, they're both kind of old, but like, even if you're 67, you don't go after like a 90-year-old man. Right. Like that's a little much. So basically this lady, Akia Morgan was her name, was taking advantage of him, and she clearly has some kind of, but maybe a mental issue, because that's what it sounds like. Right.
So we talked about this, I think maybe last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, that someone had taken Stan Lee's blood. Like apparently, like when they were like drawing blood to do blood tests, they were actually taking more than they needed, so they could take his blood, and they were like making a stamp, and they were like stamping like comic books with like his blood, and then like trying to sell them for more money. And it was like, I can't remember if it was his attorney or if it was someone that was kind of close to them. It just, to me, I hate the idea of elder abuse to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. But on top of that, this is a guy who changed the comic book industry and did so much for the comic book industry, and also a lot of self-promotion for himself.
Oh, of course.
But he's done so much, and he's a really nice individual. I met him. It wasn't a long conversation. It was at a Comic-Con a number of years ago. And I paid for a photo op with him. My wife and I came in, and he was kind of sitting down, and he was 91 at the time. And I came in, I said, Stan, it's an honor to meet you. And he says, and he turns to me, and because for a lot of times he just kind of sat there and would say something. He turns, kind of looks over his shoulder, looks at me, smiles, and goes, "It's an honor to be met." And just the way he said it and the big smile on his face, and we both laughed, and then he turned around and we took the picture, and it was just kind of a cool thing. And I was like, this guy, he's got a good sense of the notion of like, he'd be a lot of fun to just kind of sit and talk to and whatnot, and kind of pick his brain and hear about, the good old days of the Silver Age of comics, right? And all the things he did for Marvel. But it's just so sad to know that people are stealing from him, taking his money, physically abusing the guy. I mean, he's like, what, 95 years old now? I mean...
Yeah, he's 95 years old, and he's being taken by this 67-year-old woman for cars and condos. And apparently, so she's also involved in that blood thing you're talking about.
Blood's the stamp thing. It's so weird.
It was some type of business. Hands of Respect, that's it. They did this with her. So I mean, this is insane. So he's just not having a good go in his last years, and I feel like at some point, maybe since I don't know, Disney has the reins of Marvel, maybe they should try and take care of Daddy Stan Lee a little bit.
Right, or I mean, at least I don't. It's tough too because we don't know all the details, obviously, but like. That's we don't know like what he's allowing to happen, or if he's completely being run roughshod. I mean, it's just it's hard to say, but like, come on, man, like Lou Ferrigno, if you listen to the podcast, my friend, which I know you are, man, that's your boy. Go take care of him. Go step in. Come on, Lou, help out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, go Hulk all the way. Okay, so here's something that's interesting. We talked recently on the podcast about Amazon dropping like $1 billion to make a Lord of the Rings TV show that looks like it's probably going to happen before the events of Lord of the Rings, and that they're also going to have the rights to use stuff from the movies. So they're dropping a ton of money, right? I mean, like $1 billion is a lot of money. Now,
that's a ton.
Yeah, I mean, it's more than I'm ever going to see in my lifetime, and then some. But here's the thing that's really interesting. Now we'll call it more than just rumors, but that Amazon is going to develop the Dark Tower series into a television show for Amazon. Now, I don't know. Thomas, have you read the Dark Towers?
So... no, I haven't.
No,
I'm just gonna
that's
say,
fine.
I haven't done it.
I've tried to read the first book of the Dark Tower. I do a lot of reading through Audible now, just listening to it while I work or while I drive into work or whatnot.
You do a lot of
I do a lot of reading through Audible. I mean,
Sure.
I still do a lot of reading, but Audible and audiobooks is a way I can like knock through a number of books pretty quickly. And I tried starting the Dark Tower maybe like 3 times, and I only get about maybe an hour in, and then I'm just like, yeah, I'm not feeling it yet, and I put it back down.
Just not that good.
I don't. It's not hooked me yet. Like that's the problem. Okay. Is that like with a book, you need to get hooked. Like you got to get to that moment. It's the same thing like when I play an RPG. Like I remember playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time, and I love that game. Like that game is one of my all-time favorite games. Even now, I'll go back and replay it. But when the first time I played it, like it took me a little while until like there's that moment where you kind of get hooked and you're like, ooh, now I care about the characters. Now I care about the story. Now I want to know what's going to happen next. And that I just haven't got hooked yet, but at least with the Dark Tower is what I'm saying. But yeah, now it's interesting because Amazon basically is, they're supposed to be working on the Dark Tower. Apparently, they're going to do a Wheel of Time series, which I would be really interested in that. Ringworld, Lazarus, and Snow Crash is apparently what's being said that they're working on. However, what's interesting to me is that the former executive producer of The Walking Dead, Glenn Mazzara, he basically tweeted a joke about the Dark Tower out recently, and that tweet then was like picked up by someone else that works at Amazon and kind of said like, our writers take their jobs very seriously with the hashtag Dark Tower TV. And Glenn Mazzara, like a year ago, was the rumored writer for this, but they were kind of like, no, we're not doing it, trying to deny it. And then now all of a sudden, those tweets have been deleted. So listen, we're in a day and age where if you tweet something out and someone confirms it basically, and then all of a sudden tweets disappear, that's their way of saying like, oops, sorry, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also look at it and say, are we kind of to the point now where this happens intentionally? Like, it's not really an oopsie, but it's we want to get the word out, but we want to kind of test balloon it, and so we're going to kind of let it leak this way, and we're going to do it ourselves so we can control the story.
Oh, of course. First off, this is a free way to do advertising. This, like, Twitter is, like, great for this, and it spreads like wildfire so quickly. So absolutely, 100% agree with you. They're doing this just because they want to kind of garner interest.
Right. That's my feel. I mean, with all this stuff that happens, I always kind of look at it, and maybe it's because I'm a little critical now and I look at stuff a little differently, but it's like, yeah, come on. No one, it's like, some random, Brazilian version of Amazon released a date for the video game, and then it came down 12 hours later, and then lo and behold, that's the date of the video game. It's like, come on. We know it. We know what's up.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, and like six months to a year from now, you're gonna see they're gonna pump in let's say like $80 million just for an advertising budget.
It's
for this.
like tweet that crap for free. Fans will pick it up and carry the torch for you.
Yeah, I don't even understand why they pay for advertising anymore.
I mean, there's so many other ways of doing this. What's interesting to me though about this whole thing is that it's the Dark Tower. They just had a Dark Tower movie that came out last year.
Yeah, I think it was 2016, wasn't it?
I thought it was like February of 2017, but I don't know, I may be wrong as well, but it's recently. And I remember that Idris Elba was in it, and I think Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, he was in it as well. That's what made me want to see it, but I still didn't. Yeah, you were right. It was July 31st of 2017. It wasn't even that long
so,
ago.
I mean, not even a year ago. Here's the thing. I wanted to see that movie, but for some reason, I just never got out to the theater to go do it. Now I have Movie Pass, so like if it would come out now, I just go Movie Pass it. But yeah, it didn't do well. The movie didn't do well.
No, which is shocking. I mean, even with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey, and
right?
I think there'd be some kind of spark. Yeah,
for sure. But no. It didn't really. I mean, I don't know if it was poorly executed. I don't know if it was poorly directed, poorly adapted from the Stephen King source material. But for whatever reason, it didn't do well. But Amazon's going to pick it up and carry the torch with it. I mean, that could be risky.
I mean, more power to you, I guess. I mean, it sounds, from what I know of Dark Tower, it seems like such a very interesting concept. And something I would like to see, I guess, eventually, if it's done properly and you have the right kind of staff around it. So, plus, I mean, Amazon, with Amazon Prime, they're really trying to give it to Netflix right now, and I think they have a shot at doing it, especially if they have something like this running. Well,
I think the big thing is going to be the Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's what I mean. They dumped $1 billion into it. That's going to be their big money maker, in my opinion. But we'll have to see. So if you're interested in the Dark Tower, if you've read those books, if you love those, just keep your fingers crossed, because it sounds like we're going to be coming to Amazon here fairly shortly. Yeah. Okay, so here's the last thing I had, and this is, I actually only wanted to bring up like one part of it, but maybe we'll kind of talk about all of this. I'm always interested to see what gets optioned by TV networks to make a pilot and see what's gonna stick, what's not gonna stick. Well, apparently, the USA Network has opted for scripted pilots, and the one that really stood out to me is this one called Treadstone. And before I got more than the first sentence in, I understand Treadstone is Born Identity, because I've read the books, the original books by Robert Ludlum, and then of course I've seen the movies. But Treadstone is kind of like the CIA kind of Black Ops program, right? That actually recruits Jason Bourne and kind of puts him through everything, and then he eventually tries to go back and kind of uncover Treadstone and uncover where he comes from, both kind of in the books and the films. So USA is going to make something based on Treadstone. It's going to be CIA Black Ops, and I don't know I don't know if they're going to bring up or kind of show, some of the other, other subjects that are recruited. But it's interesting because they recruit people and they turn them into assassins, and they basically make sleeper cells. And when they need them, they dial them up, and boom, now you got an assassin with a target, and they just go after them.
That's awesome.
I love that idea. And it's also from the creator Tim Kring, who did Heroes. And
oh yeah,
if you remember that, like the first season of that show was really, really good, and then everything else was kind of not
the
not
first
as good.
season. Yeah, the first season was incredible, and then like everything was meh, but I still trudged my way through that show. I think if I remember correctly, the fourth season was actually good, but I don't think the rest of it was good at all. The rest of it was pretty trash.
I loved the first season of Heroes so much, and there was such like this awesome build up for the one character, the younger brother of the two, and I can't remember his character's name.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, because that was like 2007 as well. But what was cool is like I felt like he was almost kind of like he had these special abilities that was almost kind of like a Wolverine. Like he had the ability to heal, but then he could also like take the abilities of other people he was near, kind of like Rogue kind of does a little bit.
Yeah.
And so like it kind of had this like X-Men kind of feel to it. And I was like, this guy is going to be like the bad A. He's going to be like the main protagonist hero guy because he has the ability to kind of transform and like slip in and out and whatnot. And then the second season like did not follow up with that storyline at all. It kind of did its own thing.
Threw
and
that out the window.
Yeah, and I was like, what? No, like you had direction, you had focus. Just channel that a little bit more, and you're going to be the next big thing for a long time. Nope. And then they took the bad guy in that show, and which was played by Zachary Quinto. His name was Siler.
Yeah, that's it.
And like
that was it.
He was like super creepy and super villainous, and then they like turned him into some like powder puff weird like okay dude who just was like everything's great. Let's go get the paper and sit down and drink a cup of tea and let's be cool. I'm like, what? No. Like, cut people's heads open again, steal their brains and take their powers. Like, you're the Magneto of this world. I don't know. Whatever. It just
he was way more than Magneto. He was able to take powers from everybody.
And that's why I love that. Like that whole thing was like you had a bad guy that can take powers and you have a good guy that can like borrow powers. He doesn't actually take it, but like can adopt their powers. I'm like, it's a big build up to the showdown between these two, right? And as far as I know, because I think I got through the third season, that never happened. And then I was done. I was just done.
It didn't happen. The only reason I say the fourth season was good was because Robert Nepper was the villain, and he was a really good villain.
Ooh.
In that season.
Is Robert Nepper, is that the guy that plays Teabag from Prison Break?
Yes, it is.
Oh,
Hold my pocket, boy.
Oh, man. He is so good. He was one of the best things that ever came out of that show. Like,
oh yeah, it's hilarious.
Super, super creepy. Oh, I love it.
That's why I really enjoyed it, because I think I had just come off watching Prison Break when I saw Heroes. Because I remember everybody was clamoring over Heroes, and I was like, whatever.
Right.
Like, I don't want to see this. And then eventually, like a few years later, I watched this series, but I think I had just finished with Prison Break. And then I was like, oh, Robert Nepper's in the fourth season? This is going to be good. And he was a good villain. He was very, I don't know, he was like dark and like ominous. But he had these earth powers, so he was able to control like the earth and stuff. It was really cool.
Really?
Yeah. It was like if you ever played Infamous Second Son.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the villain almost from Infamous Second Son.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, Robert Nepper. Every time I see him, I'm like, yep, he's the villain, and he's going to be good.
Yeah, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a ride.
Oh, gosh. Hold my pocket. Man, that was such a great pull from memory. I loved that show back in the day. All right, well, that's all I got for Rebel Intelligence. Thomas, you have anything else?
No, I do not, sir.
All right, let's move on then. So usually this is the part of the podcast here where we talk about the question from last week, but since today I'm recording on the day episode 72 releases, I didn't ask a question because I'm going to be in Disneyland next week, and we don't have questions to read, so we're gonna kind of skip through that this week. But let's do the old thing we always have to do. So, super friends, if you're out there, if you're listening, you're loving the podcast, get out there on the Twitters and the Facebooks, and obviously share the podcast and tell your friends. But most importantly, hit up that iTunes and give us a 5-star rating, a 2 thumbs up, a 3 likes, whatever you got to do. Make it happen, and let people know why they should be listening to the Fortress of Nerditude, so that we're able to be found, and we're not going to be as hard to find as let's say a new J.R.R. Tolkien book.
Yeah. Nice.
So that we'll come
Good
back.
segue.
We'll come back around later on. Okay, so Thomas, I'm a good friend of Sean Capri's, and I was really interested because I was going through my podcast trying to get kind of caught up because I've been listening to some audiobooks, and I happened to listen to his most recent episode of We the Gamercast where you were a guest. And Sean's got a great show where he brings people on and they talk about things, sometimes game related, sometimes it kind of goes off. And he brought you on because you, not just because of this, but you got into D&D, you said about 3 years ago. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
So you started talking about that, and the conversation kind of went naturally. It was a good flow, but I was like, no, talk more D&D. I want to hear more of this. And I've had this idea of starting a D&D podcast where I get together with some other people that are very inexperienced or very little experienced maybe, and we just kind of fumble our way through it, and we have a good time and we have fun. And I've been kicking this idea around, and I've been talking to some people, and I've been trying to set up some D&D stuff. So I reached out to Sean and I said, that's really funny that you mentioned that idea, because I've been having this idea. And he's like, that is freaky. He's like, you should let Thomas know. So I immediately hit you up, and this was, I think, last Saturday. And then we DM'd back and forth most of the afternoon and just talking about podcasts and talking about, D&D and whatnot. So I wanted to have you on because I haven't had a chance to really talk about D&D yet here in the Fortress of Nerditude. And since you've been in it, only a few years, but you've gotten kind of way into it, I thought you would be a perfect person to talk to because you're like 3 years ahead of where I'm at right now, and like where you're at right now is where I want to be in 3 years.
You're at the best part. You're at the most exciting part. Like, even if you start learning everything and you get it, like still remember my first game. Like, I was so hyped. I knew nothing. I knew absolutely nothing, but I was so excited for it. And let me tell you, my friend, it was a lot more fun than I ever anticipated it being.
Right. Yes. I love this. So for those maybe that are listening who don't understand what Dungeons and Dragons is, because we're saying D&D, but Dungeons and Dragons, right? So we can get there. Explain, like in the broadest sense, what is Dungeons and Dragons?
Dungeons and Dragons, specifically what most people play now, which is 5th edition, is a tabletop RPG, and it is the granddaddy to all the video games that we see, Western RPG, JRPGs,
right.
All of them. It's just like exactly how you would think of it. Kind of more like, I would tailor it Elder Scrolls-y.
Okay.
So you pick a character, you create a character, then eventually you build a class, and you go on this grand journey with a group of your friends, with one man or woman taking hold of the story and building the world around you and kind of creating the NPCs. So you guys go through this world together, and it just exactly to the T, like, of the deepest RPG you can imagine. That's what Dungeons and Dragons is. So
what I love about this, right, is that, and I was trying to explain this, I think, to my brother a little while ago. I was trying to talk to him, and I know I'm not going to get him hyped up for something like this because he's not going to have the time and not going to have the inclination. But I come from a background where I did like acting in high school, and I did like, we would do musicals and plays and whatnot, but then we would also, like, on the weekends take video cameras and like write skits or write like little movies, or like we filmed a kind of a fanfic Highlander movie in a abandoned garage at a college campus, and we had,
oh my God, this sounds great.
Oh gosh, we had dowel rods, and like we made it look like we cut off someone's head, and we like laid their bodies strategically so like a big oil puddle on the ground looked like blood. Like, it was just like that's what we did. Like, that's kind of who we were. Like, we loved doing that kind of goofiness. But what I love about D&D, and like I said, I'm just barely getting my feet into this, is that it's a collaborative storytelling effort. Like, so it's role play, but it's also acting, but it's also storytelling. So there's, like you said, you pick a character and everyone else has a character, and you get a framework for, like, hey, there's children that are being eaten in this community, and we don't know where where their bodies are going and what's happening. But we found this black fang in the forest, and it had some blood on it, and you need to go investigate that. And that's it. And like, that's what you get. And so it's a hook. And then, like, you kind of have to figure out, like, what you're going to do, and like how you're going to proceed, and then, what kind of clues you're going to find, what you're going to search, how you're going to, combat whatever obstacles thrown at you. And like, you have to think on your feet, and like, you have to kind of work together. And I love that. Like, that is the best part of video games, is playing with friends and like working together. But this is like, with a group of people that you have to work together, right? You can't go alone. This isn't a solo game. So, I mean, that's the number one rule of D&D, which is never split the party. Right? So, never split the party, because bad things always happen. I mean, you could always try to go it alone, but I mean, just remember that in D&D, consequences are real. There's no respawn, right, at all. So if your character dies, your character's gone. Like, start a new one. So explain this to me, right? Because this isn't something I've experienced yet. I've played D&D once. I've got a group of people I'm trying to kind of get a game together with, and I got another one that I'm kind of working my way into. It's a family that lives like right across the little cul-de-sac area from me, and they said, yeah, we're gonna play. We'll let you know, and da-da-da. So we had something scheduled for this last Saturday, but they just barely got back from Disneyland themselves, and they were all tired. And I was like, no, I get it. That's, it's fine. I'm like, dang it. I was so let down though. I was like, I want to play. I was just amped. But so explain this character, like, and I know there's the player handbook, which, most players are going to want, because that kind of lays out like some of the basics, right? Like, there's certain classes, and there's also certain characters, I guess. So yeah, the player handbook will show you all the races and kind of their racial bonuses, and then the classes and their bonuses, and kind of how it progresses from level 1 to level 20. So that kind of helps give you like a framework, like a guide to kind of figure out exactly what you're going to be able to do or not do, right? Exactly. Yeah, and from there, so you're going to be able to pick your race, couple it with a class that gives you the best bonus, or maybe you just want to play something silly, like maybe a gnome barbarian, which is hilarious to think of a rage-induced little gnome. Like a 2-foot gnome or something, right? Yeah, getting all enraged and coming at you with a gigantic battle axe or something. I love it. So, I mean, people play that way, and it's fun. I just wouldn't recommend it if you're trying to actually be like a damage dealer on your team. Right. You're like, well, you chopped his shins very thoroughly, but he's still alive. Oh man, that's the brilliance of Dungeons and Dragons, is you could do anything. Yeah, you can make it what you want it to, right? Yeah, exactly. And the best part still to me, because I'm a writer, I love writing. I still do journalism. I still have my writing on the side, which I'm trying to do. And the best thing is building the character backstory in the background. So you talk about where your character came from, who your parents were. Are they still alive? Did they die? Were you adopted? What has your journey been up to this point? What's your character's flaws? Like, how will this affect the party later on down the line? And of course, you pick your alignment as well. See, this is all stuff that's new to me, right? So I've barely done a little bit of this, and I've got the player's handbook, and I've got the monster manual, I've got the dungeon master's guide, and I've got a screen already. Like, I'm already buying. I've got like 7 sets of dice. Yeah. And like, I haven't, like, I played like once, and it was like a little one shot, it took us like 4 or 5 hours to play, and I had a ton of fun. I mean, I just loved it. Like, I'm all in on this. I really want to get a good group going. But what was interesting is I tried to come up with a backstory. And so I was like, well, I'm going to be a human paladin. I was like, I don't know much about paladins, but I'm like, I kind of read a little bit, and it looks like, okay, these guys are like really justice oriented, and, whatever. Great class to pick, by the way, for your first class. Oh my god. Yeah, I had no clue, right? And so I came up with a name. My character's name was Jonas Cloudhammer. And he was a former farmer. His father was a farmer who farmed some land for the local baron. And when his father died, Jonas was only 14, and the local baron didn't want to trust the farm to a 14-year-old boy. And so basically he said, you can come like work in the stables, or you can be off the land, but I've got to give it to someone else. And Jonas felt that like he was betrayed, like he should have been able to, because he's helped his dad farm the land since he was 4 years old, and felt that this baron was overstepping his bounds and wasn't doing what was right. And so he decided that he wanted to go out into the greater world and get some training, get some education maybe, and stand up for the little people that get picked on by these, by this, upper class. And like, that was my backstory, and I came into it and I was like, this is a solid backstory. I like this. I don't know if like that's a good backstory. I just made it all up. And
no, I'm digging this. It's awesome.
And I told this to the guys I was playing with, and like one of the other guys was playing for the first time. It was actually a group of all of us were like newbies, and this guy's like, my name is Finn, and I'm a rogue, and I think I steal things, and like that's what he had. And I was like, wow, I had like a reason for like my character's action, like why he's going out into the world now, and what happened to him. And so I was like, did I do too much homework? I'm like, is this too far? But it sounds like that's kind of what you need, right? You want a rich backstory.
Yeah, I mean, so there are people that just play for the battle, but there are the best way to play, in my opinion, is to role play it. So like really, really flesh out that character.
Okay.
And because it really eventually down the line, like I'm sure your DM is going to have you come back to your farm one day, and you're either going to have the choice to just leave the baron alone, or you're going to get to squash him and take your family's land back.
See, yes, I love that. But that would be according to the dungeon master, right? Like,
right. That would be up to his discretion, and
right.
he would approach you, and obviously you guys can work it from there.
Nice. So let me ask you a question, because I've heard this term. You said some people are just in it for the battle. Like they just want to get into fights. I've heard this term on Reddit quite a number of times because I lurk on the D&D sub. Murder hobos. Explain to me what murder hobos are.
Murder hobos are the best. Murder hobos, well, it's not specifically said, but originally it came from dungeon crawls.
Okay.
So basically your DM would put you in a massive, massive dungeon that would take you probably like 8 or 9 hours to get through. And you would just go through and murder everything. But now there's been like, well, I wouldn't say now, but for a while there's been murder hobos in parties where everything they do is like, I attack. Like, dude, we're talking to the king. He's like, nope, I want to kill him.
Like, doesn't matter. He wants to kill things.
Or they walk into let's say they're walking along the road. They've been on this long journey. They lost their horses, and it's terrible weather out. It's raining. It's thundering. They're trying to find a place to sleep, maybe get a meal, and they come upon a small farmhouse, and there's just a mother and her small child there, and she invites you in as long as you pay coin and maybe do some labor, and you'll get food and shelter for the night. And then, of course, in the middle of the night, your rogue decides to get up and murder this entire family.
Seriously. Come on.
And he's like, well, we can get all the food and shelter we want now, and we have our gold back. It's like, but did this family really do anything to you?
Right.
And then the father comes back, and you find out he's like a level 20 paladin, and he just squashes your party, TPK, and you guys are done. Game over.
Total party kill, right? TPK?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I've seen this term all over the place, and I was like, what is a murder hobo? That makes no sense to me. But it's good to know that, because, like I said, I haven't played a ton. How do you deal with someone like that in your party? Like, can you reason with people like this, or is this going to be their personality, the way they want to play the game, and that's what they're going to do?
So, as a player, the way to deal with another player like this in your party is to obviously talk to them outside a game and be like, look, we want to play the game. We don't just want to go around murdering people. I mean, some parties just do that. They run evil campaigns and they just go around slaughtering people. But if you guys are running a regular campaign and you're trying to kind of grow the world and the NPCs and the relationships your characters have with all these people, you just talk to them outside of the game. And hopefully that works. And if that doesn't work, then as a DM, I would start having maybe like headhunters coming after him. He's in the middle of a battle, and I lace traps all around him, and I make sure that like he's kind of getting the message that if you're going to keep doing this, there's going to be severe consequences to your actions.
Right, you're going to ramp up those consequences real fast.
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
I had one in the second game. I actually DM'd, and he was really adamant about killing everyone, and he took a build from so I bumped them up really quickly. I was like, I don't want to start at level 1. Let's go to like level 9 or 10. Let's start there, and I'll throw a bunch of really, really difficult enemies at you guys to start off with. And he went with a rogue paladin build. So, and that's like Liam from Critical Role on YouTube is very famous for this build. It is a very OP build. So you basically at one point you're going to get 3 attacks from stealth, and you're going to be able to smite these people at the same time. So you're going to be able to deal like
a ton of damage.
Yeah, a ton of damage, and nobody's going to be able to know where you are. That's the thing about it too.
Oh, okay.
So he started going into stealth and sneaking into shops or homes at night and just randomly killing and pillaging houses. So I was like, okay, this isn't going to go well for you. And mind you, this game only lasted about, I think, 5 or 6 sessions because everybody got so fed up with him they didn't want to play anymore. I dropped a red dragon on them.
Wow.
I dropped a red dragon on them, and I basically had the dragon try to eat him the entire time. He wasn't paying attention to anybody else except for him.
Really?
Yeah, and he was I forget his name. It was Karatorn was the dragon's name, and he was basically, I called him a judge dragon. He came down to judge the humans, and he was flying from city to city, and he was judging all of the humans that lived within there because he was basically a dragon god.
Wow.
And he came upon the party and was basically like, I've been looking for you for years. Your killing stops now. And I just went to town on him.
Nice. So you brought up something that's interesting, right? So you said that the other players didn't want to play with him. How important is finding a good group? How important is like a good chemistry amongst the people that are playing? Because traditionally, like, people sit down and play together around a table, or now like you can also do it on the internet. And I know there's websites like Roll20, which is where I played my first time. Like, how important is that team dynamic, like that group dynamic?
That finding a good group to play with is paramount. Like, there will be nothing that will ruin a game more than playing with people that you really don't want to play with, or that you guys are of 2 separate minds, like at all times, from yourselves, like your actual person, to your players in character, to your characters in there, your PCs.
Gotcha.
That is, like, if you don't have a good group, man,
you're not gonna have fun, right?
Yeah, you're not gonna have a good time. And the DM, like I just said, like, the DM's gonna have to come in and handle it. And when the DM handles it, it's gonna kind of suck for everybody because it's gonna derail everything completely. And like your players may get upset about it. It may totally derail. So it's best to have a good group of people. Like, thankfully for the stream we have coming up, we have a great group. So it's really fun.
Nice. So let me ask you this. So you got a good group of people, right? You found some friends, you made some friends, you bought friends, however you got some friends together. And
I always buy my friends, man.
Right? I mean, whatever you got to do. You got a group, you've got player handbooks, you've created a character, you've got a DM who's set up a world or used kind of a pre-rendered world, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons, like Wizards of the Coast.
Like a module.
It has like a module, right, that you can run. and then you can just kind of follow along. You know, it's kind of, you know, story by numbers, right? The thing I always intimidated me was the dice, because it's like, it's not just like I'm used to growing up, you know, like I'm playing, you know, Yahtzee and I'm using a D6. At the time, I wouldn't have even called it a D6. I would have said, this is a die, because
it's just a regular old
die.
die.
I wouldn't have known there's any other varieties. And then, you know, I start looking into this and it's like, oh, I need a D20. I need a D8, I need a D6, I need a D4, I need a D10. It was like all of a sudden, like I've got like 5 or 6 dice in my hand, or 5 or 6 die in my hand. I'm like, what does all this mean? So explain the dice, and explain how like the dice mechanic kind of works in Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay, so to be fairly honest, most video games now still use this as RNG.
But it's just done in the background, and they do the math, and you never see it.
Exactly, yeah. And you never see this. So RNG is pretty much using a D20 or a D100, depending on what they want to use. So your D20 is basically for all of your saves and your initial rolls. So all your stats, so your strength, dexterity, charisma, intelligence, wisdom, all of that, that's all determined with the roll of your D20 plus adding your modifier to it. And your modifier is however high your ability score is. So if it's like I'll compare it to my current rogue, who's an 18, so he gets a +3 in anything for dexterity, which also bumps up all of the dexterity stats, so I have a +8 to all of my stealth checks.
So right, so like if you're going to try to sneak past someone and you say, hey, I want to sneak behind this dragon, the dungeon master would say, okay, well, you've got to do a dexterity check, so you're going to roll your D20, and then whatever it lands on, let's say it lands on a 10, then you're going to add your +8 modifier to that.
Exactly.
And then and so your number's an 18. And so then the question is, the DM has some sort of rule or some sort of a guide that says, in order to sneak past, your dexterity needs to be above X, and they've got a number, right?
Oh, for a red dragon, let's just say it's a red dragon. You probably need a stealth check of about a 24 or above to get past a red dragon.
Right. So if you roll less than that, the dragon's going to see you or smell you or, you know, hear you, something along those lines. And you're going to get the attention of the dragon, and that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to be sneaky.
I'm trying to be a sneaky guy.
Right.
I'm trying to come up behind him with my daggers.
So that's what I love about this. When I played it, and I've talked to other people, it took me a little while to understand, like, any action you want to have, you know, if I say I want to sneak past this red dragon, or if I want to, you know, cast smite, or if I want to whatever I'm going to do, I've got to check that against a number, basically to say, like, is this successful or is it not successful, right?
Well, in the case of smite, which you just bring up, actually, if you actually hit an opponent first, so if you're in battle and you get high enough to beat their armor class with your roll, smite, you just have to say, I want to use smite before you roll damage, and then you're good to go.
It just adds on. It's like a modifier.
Yep, you roll your damage die, which I believe for smite is a D6. Oh god, I don't remember. I think it's a D6. And so you add an extra D6 to your attack with smite.
Nice.
Yeah, that's why paladins are so awesome, because you're going to hit somebody and you're going to always be dealing extra damage. So from low levels, like level 2, you're going to be always dealing like 14 plus damage almost. So I got a group of people. We got characters, we got die, where we've got a story, you know, something, you know, like children being eaten, and there's a black fang that was found, and we've got to go investigate. And so now we've got a quest, a mission, you know, an adventure to go on. We all take turns saying what we're going to do. We travel. We end up running into some goblins, or we run into a giant spider, or, you know, whatever happens. And in the end, we run into a black dragon, and this black dragon spits acid, and it's been eating children. And oh my god, what level are you guys?
Well, we started at level 1.
You're fighting a black dragon?
We were fighting a black dragon. Yeah.
Oh my, your DM is evil.
We were like level 2 when we got to the final fight. It was long. it was rough and it was long, and that for me was awesome. Like I loved it. But we do this. We go on this adventure. We beat the dragon, right? Is D&D over? Like, is that the game? No. Okay.
Not even close.
So explain to me, like, because I think this is a thing like I thought of, and I would guess a lot of people who maybe play video games or have a concept of just games in general, like, is there really truly an end to a game of D&D?
So technically, by the rule book, level 20 is the highest you can go. So that's pretty much it. But of course, there's people that continue on, and they've built out tables for parties from level 20 to level 100, which is not in the official book, so you're not going to see these unless you really dig around for them. But even if you do get to level 20, it's still not over. You guys could still go on quests. Your DM could still challenge you to death. Like, there's so many creatures out there that could squash you in a second. And he could also pit you guys against each other in a battle royale. Oh, yeah, it's awesome.
Sounds like fun already.
There's so many things you can do. Certain DMs have one overarching theme for the entire game, and you slowly kind of work your way up through these small little story arcs, these side missions, and these big events to get to the main event, which a lot of the times is at level 20. A lot of the times people set up a 10-level story arc and then completely switch and go to something else, or even 5 levels or 3 levels. Like, people have these huge, massive battles and these grand storylines, and then they just move on to the next one.
See, I love that because I love playing like open world RPG games. I mean, I've loved doing that kind of stuff in video games for a long time. I remember I put in something like 110 hours into Final Fantasy VII before I beat the game. You know,
was it Emerald
actually
Weapon
beat the game and finish the ending of the story?
Yeah.
It was Emerald and it was Ruby. It was both. But I was a little under prepared when I first tried it. And then eventually I did all the chocobo breeding, and I got the gold chocobo, and I got Knights of the Round, and I was Knights of the Round and Mime. And then at that point it was like, all right. I remember that when I actually got to the end of the game, the actual final fight was so freaking wimpy at that point. Like, I was just so OP that I was like, I was happy. Like, I loved the story and I loved the end, but I was like, feel like a much of a fight. Whereas fast forward a number of years, I remember finishing Final Fantasy X, and I had about 100 hours at the end of that game, but I was way not prepared for the final fight in that game. And I remember fighting for about an hour, and then eventually I'd die, and then I'd have to start over again. And I did that 8 times in a single day until I finally figured out with my level and what I had, what strategy I had to follow. I was taking notes, so I knew, like, okay, this is, doing well. When this happens, I need to be prepared for this. And it took me literally like 8 hours to beat the final boss in that game. It took me 8 attempts, about an hour each, 45 minutes to an hour each. But like, I loved that. Like it didn't deter me. Like, I wasn't like, well, I'm done. I quit and walk away. I wanted to get in there. I wanted to play it. So like, I have a love of RPG games. So Dungeons and Dragons speaks to me for that, the RPG aspect of it. Also from kind of like the interactive storytelling and acting, because I know people will do funny voices. They'll do accents, and I've been known to do some horrible, horrible accents on this podcast in the past. And, yeah,
that's the fun.
I like that. I like that aspect. So let me ask you, Thomas, what drew you to Dungeons and Dragons about 3 years ago?
My first encounter with it was Critical Role, and that was
okay.
That was really like the big day, because everything before that was me assuming that it's like, no, Dungeons and Dragons is just way too nerdy. That's like one of those things like I'm a gamer and I'm nerdy,
right?
But that's just like way too far, right? Exactly.
But not that nerdy. Yeah.
Once I watched Critical Role, like that was it. Like, I saw the magic kind of like unfold. Like, oh man, these people they're acting out their character. They're involved in this story. And this one person is building like this grand adventure for them. And the thing that really brings an RPG together for me is every little tiny detail doesn't go unnoticed. And that's what D&D is. Like every small detail, it's like you walk into the shop and there's a fireplace set in the back corner of the room. It's a bit damp and still a little cold, even though there's a fireplace back there. An old shopkeeper, an old woman comes up to you, and she seems to be the shopkeep, and she just hobbles over. Is there anything I can help you with? She seems very wrinkly, and her hair is parted back in a bun. She's wearing a blue dress with ruby diamonds all set into her necklace, carrying a cane, and it looks almost glass-like. Like those details, I love them. I love it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just painted a picture with words there. That
once I saw
beautiful.
Matthew Mercer do that and like kind of just spin a yarn out of nothing, just nothing, it spoke to me as a writer. It's like, I want to do this. Like, this is incredible.
Nice. So you watch Critical Role, you get really excited. Like, what was your next step? Like, did you know people that already played D&D, or did you just like go out and get the player's handbook on your own? Did you like go to a local game shop and try to find people?
I didn't know anybody that played D&D. So I looked for the closest game shop to me, which actually was like, I found out, I'm like, wow, it's like not even 5 minutes away from my house. So I went over there. I picked up the starter set, the player's handbook, and a couple extra sets of die. And then I was like, I asked them about when are they doing Adventure League, and they're like, this week. We're actually doing it in a couple days. I was like, this is awesome. So I went home and I started reading through the player's handbook like it was a book, just like trying to get everything. And then I remember having this moment of fear where I looked at the character sheet and I looked at the die, and I'm like, I don't understand any of this. Like, it's like I just can't fathom how to do this. But everything fell into place when I got to my first game. Like, luckily, it was me and two other people. It was the first time that we were all playing, and we were in a group of another 4 people. So they kind of they shepherded us along, and they kind of taught us like slowly, and they were awesome. And then actually, the funny thing is, one of the people that played with me that day is actually, I've been playing D&D with him for 2 years, and he's in the stream that we're going to be doing. Yeah. So it's like, we're friends. Like we love playing D&D together. So yeah.
Nice. So you start playing, you're at the local game shop, you make a friend. You didn't have to buy a friend apparently. And so like, how long had you been playing before you decided, I want to step into that role that Matthew Mercer does on Critical Role. I want to be a DM. I want to create the world in which the players will operate in. How long before you made that transition?
The initial reason I did it is because I wanted to DM. So I was like, let me jump in, play a few games, and kind of get a hang of it. So I played, I think I played only 4 games. I played only 4 games, and then I started DMing.
4 games. How many play
4,
sessions
4
would
sessions.
that have been approximately?
4 sessions of I think
4
we were
sessions,
playing like
tops.
5 hours each, so 20 hours of play, roughly. And then I was like, because I was very anxious, like I really wanted to jump in, because like all the stuff I write on the side, I'm eventually hoping one day that I can either write a book or a video game. So I already had like material set to go, and I kind of wanted to play test it in D&D. But that was like, I found out very quickly that wasn't everything I needed to be prepared.
Right. You'd mentioned on Sean's podcast that they broke your world in like the first 5 minutes.
Not the entire world, but my story. Like I had thought out like 4 or 5 options of what could have possibly happened. And they went with an option that I was just not prepared for. And I was like, wow. So like I had said on his show, I brought them in to like a hanging in a town center. And I had expected to either I'm going to bring in some bandits eventually, kind of start raiding the town a bit, or maybe what's going to happen is they may even I even thought that they might have gotten to a fight with each other because they were very different alignments at the time. And so like it was like the paladin and the cleric, and then I had a bard, a ranger, a barbarian, and a fighter. And they were like all very different. And the one thing that I did not anticipate was they were starting to question why this guy was being hung. They weren't like sitting back and watching the show or anything, so I had to pull out like the executioner, and I had to talk to them as the executioner, which again, not prepared for it. And then I had to talk to them as a town official, and I was like, you know what? Like you're at the execution, and the entire town center is just becoming covered in smoke, and there's smoke everywhere, and people are starting to panic a little bit. People are running to the left, to the right. They're looking around for their loved ones, and out of the shadows comes a group of bandits. So I had the bandits come to them, and a couple of them actually tried to ditch and run. So I had to put bandits in the alleyway. So they had a more difficult encounter.
So now there's like an army
so there
of
was
bandits.
way more bandits than I had anticipated, because I was like, okay, they kind of cut me off at the beginning of my story. I'm not letting them cut away from these bandits. Like I was like, it's not happening.
Yeah, you're trying to get them back into a place where you can help shepherd them towards the main adventure that you want them to kind of go. And they're having a question about the morality of whether or not they should be hanging these individuals in this town square.
Exactly.
I love that because so it's something I was talking with someone about D&D, and they said, well, you know, you have to, besides being like ready for the unexpected, they said you have to kind of think out of the box. So the guy was trying to explain, like, if you're shooting an arrow and you're going to, you know, trying to be stealthy, not trying to alert other guards, and you shoot an arrow at this guard, if you hit him, he may fall back into the tower and may alert everyone else in the tower. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, you may miss him. But this character had the ability that, like, when they attacked someone, they could also control which way they fell or which way they moved them. And so they shot an arrow, plunges into this guy's chest. Instead of him falling backwards, he falls forwards out of the window and drops down onto the ground where no one else is going to be alerted. And it was kind of just like a moment where they had to just kind of like think outside the box a little bit. And the DM had to be prepared for that, right?
Yeah.
Because he was probably ready for, you know, other guards are going to be alerted. The tower is going to, you know, be called to action, and now we're going to have a big fight. Instead, they got their one guy out of the tower, killed the sentry, and, you know, then they snuck into the castle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so like, you got to be prepared for that, right? I mean, or at least you should be prepared for that.
The thing I think that every DM, every aspiring DM should be prepared for is to just prepare to understand this one, like, golden truth about Dungeons and Dragons. Your players dictate what's going to happen. You just build everything around their actions. That's like That's the best way to go about it. And I know a lot of DMs, like even myself, go into it like, I'm going to build this very linear storyline for them. But that's not what D&D is about. D&D is about going about it in the most awkward way possible, to be fairly honest. It's like, you don't know what could happen. You don't ever know what could happen. Like someone, like you said, if someone's shooting an arrow and they miss, and let's say they knock over a pot or something and it falls off a castle wall and nails a guard in the head, and then all of a sudden they're all looking around like, what's happening? Like the smallest little thing could happen. Yeah,
it could have a massive impact, which is interesting because this is a fictional world, right? This is, you know, a game, but isn't that real life? I mean, the smallest, littlest thing can affect so many other things and have real world consequences.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what it is.
I love it. So you played for like 20 hours and then you started DM. So you've been DMing for what, 2.5, almost 3 years now?
No, I DM'd a game for, I would say I DM'd a game for 8 months. Okay. And then I tried to keep that game going together, but unfortunately our schedules were a little messed up. And then I ended up, like I said, I DM'd another game for about 5 sessions. And then I got back into playing. So I got back into playing because I wasn't able to kind of get a group together to DM for. So I was like, well, I can't find like 6 other people. Or at that point, it was 2 of my old players still wanted to play. I was the DM, and I was still looking around for more players, so we wanted to get like 4 or 5 other players to do it. So I was like, let me just look for another group. And I ended up playing, which I still love. Playing is awesome, don't get me wrong. I love playing a character, but it's just like you never get as much satisfaction once you've DM'd, I guess.
I guess maybe that also depends on your personality type too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it sounds like a guy like you, a guy like me might enjoy DMing immensely, whereas other people maybe just want to come in and have a fun time and experience an adventure, but maybe don't want to do the world building that would be required to kind of set up the adventure.
Exactly. Yeah, because I get super into it. I build maps. I build like the NPCs in the town. I like building how the town looks and like kind of what story elements are going to be where and who's important and who's not. And if the
So do you write these things out? Do you like have like a notebook, or do you like do it digitally and have like pages of notes for this stuff, like for all the NPCs and like the towns and whatnot?
Oh, I have the NPCs I have just in my computer, and I have names and literally like accents and everything that'll go with each name. And then all the stories I have in about like 6 notebooks. Yeah, I've written out like a bunch of stuff. Most of it is like scrawlings of like, this is what I want everything to look like, and then like 10 pages of story, and then like something else, and then world building. It's a writers are a disaster, so that's how it works.
Sure. So let's bring this back. So how would you recommend people? Because like I'm getting into this. I've done it once. Like I did a one shot. It was about a 5-hour play session. It was just a story and a 5-hour session. Had a great time, loved it. And like I said, I've got the books and whatnot, and I'm kind of on my way. And I've got this idea. I want to kind of do a podcast, which I think eventually I'm going to end up putting this together, and I will end up DMing it. So yeah. I want to get some experience in this world, and kind of get my feet wet before I just jump into this. So at least we can have quality content, and it'll be fun to listen to. But for someone who's brand new, for someone who's maybe listening to the podcast right now, and they're saying, you know what, I've always wanted to try that, but I've never really known where to begin. Where would you recommend people start? Like, what should they do? What should be their first steps?
So I would highly recommend picking up the starter set just for beginners, because you already get a set of dice, and they kind of give you the Mines of Fendelver. So they give you a little module that you can run with you and your friends, and it's very simple. They even give you some pre-generated characters so you can kind of get used to how everything's running. And they give you extra character sheets so you can see like, okay, this is how they created the character sheet. Now maybe I can create my own. So they kind of give you a little bit of everything. Pick up the player's handbook for sure, 100%. And then I would say peruse your local game store. Find one for sure.
Find a game store, find a group, try to find a group that way.
I mean, if you have friends that'll be interested and will do this with you, that's the best way to do it. But there's still nothing like going in, like jumping into the deep end. Like I knew nobody. I do nothing about this world except for what I saw in Critical Role, and I just jumped in, and I was like immediately pulled in so quickly.
Would you recommend new players go and watch things like Critical Role, or listen to a playthrough podcast, like stuff like Adventure Zone or How Friends Roll or anything like that? Or would you say just, kind of go in new and fresh, like don't kind of get preconceived notions of what it is based on other people's experience?
Oh yeah, I was going to say definitely check out Critical Role, only because Critical Role sets like a standard of what maybe you want your experience of D&D to be like. And it's also just because it's just so entertaining and breaks, like even they still go through the rules all the time. So they're constantly going. So you'll learn a lot just from watching Critical Role. But go into Critical Role and just don't expect every D&D game to be that way, because that's super high production. Right. They're voice actors, like
right, exactly. It's like they're the high watermark maybe for D&D, kind of like how Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is the high watermark for fantasy.
Oh yeah, you're talking about guys that have every Thursday, which it's on now actually. Oh wow, look at that. It's on right now. And Their stream numbers average out at about like 120,000 over YouTube and Twitch, which is insane. Every Thursday still.
Right.
And their videos go to about 1 million. So
right.
Yeah,
It's a lot of people are watching it.
yeah, they love Critical Role. So I would say, yeah, definitely Critical Role. If you want to learn like how to be a DM, I would say maybe check out WebDM. You can also check out Matthew Mercer's DM tips. That's good ways. He also has tips for players, as does Anywhere on Geek and Sundry or Nerdist.
Right.
Any of that, like Satine Phoenix is also a really good DM to check out. I believe she's on Nerdist, on Alpha, one of the two. Yeah.
So go get the starter. If you're listening and you want to get in, go get the starter set. Maybe watch Critical Role. If you're going to watch Critical Role, would you say start at the beginning at season 1, or would you say kind of start at the beginning of season 2? Because I know season 2 just started maybe like a month and a half, 2 months ago, right?
Campaign 2,
Campaign 2.
Either, it's kind of like season 2. They're at episode. So right now, as we're doing this, they're doing episode 14.
14. So a little over 3 months.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, you can start it at. It's obviously way more, again, higher production value. At the first episode of the first campaign, it looks like they're playing in someone's bedroom with like low res audio and low res cameras. But that campaign is like, I would say that's definitely the one you have to watch. It's incredible. Plus, I mean, the episodes are long. The episodes are long.
Right. I would say like the episodes are like 3-4 hours each usually, right?
There's a bunch, like if they have big battle sequences, they'll go to like 6 hours sometimes.
Right. So you're talking a serious time commitment, and they do it every week. So
well, if it comes out Thursday and it drops on YouTube Monday. So what I used to do is when I had my days off, I would like start the morning. I would turn on Critical Role. Like on YouTube. I never catch the live streams ever. So I would always watch it on YouTube. So I'd spend like a good 4 hours watching Critical Role sipping my coffee.
Nice.
Or 3 coffees.
Nice. Yeah, see, I want to go back and I want to watch Critical Role because I've watched parts of it here and there and kind of like dipped in and like I love it and it's exciting, but I always feel like I need to start from the beginning. But I also look at that and go, ooh, that's a pretty hefty backlog to get through.
Yeah.
Especially, with, 2 young kids and, a full-time job and whatnot and, a wife who wants some attention every now and again.
Of course.
So yeah. So I figure like it may take me a while to kind of get through that, but I'm really intrigued by this because I want to get more into this world. And I'm one of those guys that it's all in or all out. It's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And I want to be in this world. So like I want to dive in. Like I've been looking at some like map builder kind of stuff, like how to create like some dungeons online, so you can put like notations next to them and whatnot. So I'm starting to try to look around for DM tools.
Okay.
Because I know that's probably going to be something I'm going to need to have in my arsenal at some point in the near future.
Yeah. I would recommend, even right now, I would say for like map building, like actual like here's this town, like you're building out like basically a like a state or maybe even a continent or just a country, like a small country. Use Incarnate. It's very, very good tool.
Okay.
Incarnate with a K. It's awesome. It helps you build out, like you can build out everything within a country or an area, and it has preset icons, and you can even drop in your own images to plop on the map if you want as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So let's kind of wrap this up and let's ask a question here to the Super Friends, because we typically will do this at the end of each podcast. And I think the question should be like, what if you're interested in Dungeons and Dragons, or if you've played Dungeons and Dragons, what interests you or what interested you to get you into it? Because I'm curious to see like how people are drawn into this, because for me it was something like you said, Thomas, like I always looked at it like I'm nerdy and I'm into a lot of stuff. Like I think I wore a Data from the Next Generation T-shirt for like a good 6 months in junior high. I mean, I probably should have made some better choices, but I loved it, and like that's what I was into. But it didn't, like I haven't had a desire until recently, and things like the Geek and Sundry and all the D&D stuff that's on there and Critical Role, and seeing Dungeons and Dragons has such a prominent role in Stranger Things, I think has been really kind of a really positive light, because when I grew up in the 80s as a kid, like I heard all sorts of stuff about like, hey, this is, don't play that game. That's satanic. You're fooling around with forces. So you don't know what will happen. And you'd hear that kind of stuff, and like parent groups are like freaking out. They're like, I don't want you playing with that wizard game. And so, I always kind of stayed away from like, I don't want to go to hell and, play around with that wizard game. Who knows what'll happen? Satan will pop up through the board, and I'm like, there's no board. Like, I had no concept of really what it was.
Yeah, if you actually roll 3 6s in a row, you get sent.
That's right, right. Yeah, exactly. So for me, it was more like seeing it kind of coming more into mainstream lately in the last few years that kind of piqued my interest. So I want to hear from the Super Friends. What interests you about Dungeons and Dragons, or what was the thing that drew you in? And you can answer us at all the normal places, which is facebook.com/FortofNerd, Twitter @FortofNerd. You can also get us on our email, which is fortofnerd@gmail.com, or our telephone number. You can call in and tell me a tale, and that's 801-477-7687. Thomas, thank you so much for coming on the podcast tonight and spend some time here in the Fortress of Nerditude. Tell all of our super friends out there where they can find you, where you are on all the social media, and what you've got upcoming so they can tune in and follow you wherever you may be.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Spencer. It's been a great time. I had to do that. Was one of my favorite voices ever.
I love it.
You guys can find me on Twitter at GameStom_UD. And you can find me coming up on, well, it's actually up right now on YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer at Sticks and Crits. And the website is shortly following within a couple months when the D&D live stream game is set to go. And that's going to be at sticksandcrits.com. Sticks and Crits with an N. And that's going to be the awesomeness right there. I can't wait.
Nice. Definitely follow Thomas on Twitter. Get on sticksandcrits.com. And let's make this community a big thing, right? Let's make this a fun place to come together and break down those barriers like we talked about.
Yes, that's what I love the most about doing games journalism in any way, or just venturing out like this. It's the people that you get to like communicate with on an almost daily basis, pretty much, and just share like your little girly nerdiness with. That's pretty much how it is.
I am happy to share my girly nerdiness with you, Thomas. Awesome. I'm down, man. You got a follower in me. Well,
thank you, sir.
From all of us here at the Fortress of Nerditude to all of you out there, wherever you may be, may the Force be with you. Always.
Good night, everyone.